Australia just banned social media for kids under 16. Similar laws are spreading across the US, UK, and Europe. The momentum is strong, and who could possibly oppose the idea of protecting children? But before we pass more laws, there is an important question to ask. Why do we want to keep our children safe in the first place? Hi, I'm Ben, the family IT guy. I'm a dad and a cybersecurity expert with 30 years of experience. We want our children safe so they can grow up free to express themselves personally, professionally, creatively, free to form their own beliefs, make their own choices, build their own lives, free to become whoever they're going to become. Safety is not the goal. Safety is what enables the goal. Freedom is the goal. When I imagine my son at 25, I see possibilities. Maybe he's starting a company. Maybe he's creating something. Art, code, music, ideas. Maybe he's organizing people around a cause that matters to him. Maybe he's questioning something that everyone else is taking for granted. I don't know what he will do, and that's the point. I want him to have the freedom to find out. That is what we are trying to protect. Not just safety for its own sake, but safety that preserves freedom and does not constrain it. So when strangers offer to protect our children, we have to ask, protect them for what purpose? Safe so they can be free, or safe in a way that constrains the very freedom that we want for them? Here is how age verification laws actually work. To verify the age of children, you must verify everyone. You cannot check some people and not others. So to protect the kids, every adult must submit to identity verification. Everyone's online activity gets linked to their government ID. This is not like showing ID at a bar. At a bar, the bouncer sees your ID, lets you in, and then forgets about you. He doesn't keep a copy. He doesn't track who you talk to, what you drink, how long you stay, or what you talk about while you're there. Online age verification creates a permanent, searchable database of your activity linked to your government identity. The children are the justification. The surveillance is the result. And here's what makes this particularly dangerous. Security systems like this have no success metrics. If nothing bad happens, the government claims that the system worked. If something bad does happen, they claim they need more power. You can never verify that the system is actually protecting anyone. When someone promises that the government will keep your kids safe, ask yourself, how would we know? What would prove that it's working? What would prove that it's not? There is no answer. The promise is unfalsifiable. And unfalsifiable promises are the most dangerous kind because they can never be held accountable. This is not about criticizing the government or the people that administer it. It's about the natural reality of incentives. For example, politicians cannot defund security programs. If something bad happens afterwards, their career is over. Bureaucracies must justify their own existence. No one gets promoted for eliminating their own job in a bureaucracy. So these government security systems can only grow. They do not shrink. And their original purpose becomes irrelevant. Supporters of these laws will say that the data will be protected. There will be safeguards, legal protections. Almost every surveillance system in history has made that promise. Here are a few examples of what has actually happened. In 1940, the U.S. government conducted a census. They promised citizens the information was confidential. Names, addresses, ancestry, standard demographic data. The census had the strongest legal protections in American history under Title 13 of the U.S. Code, with criminal penalties of up to 5 years in prison for wrongful disclosure. This was considered the gold standard of government data protection. Then Pearl Harbor happened. The country was terrified. We had been attacked on our own soil. President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. 36 days later, Congress passed the Second War Powers Act, which suspended census confidentiality. Within 7 days, census officials made lists of every Japanese American in targeted regions. Names and addresses. 120,000 people were forced from their homes at gunpoint. Families were transported in trains with the windows covered so they couldn't see where they were being taken to. They were imprisoned behind barbed wire for years. Their homes were occupied. Their businesses were sold. Everything they had built was taken from them. The strongest legal protections were overridden in 36 days when the government decided it wanted the data. The people who designed the census system probably never imagined that outcome. The infrastructure exceeded their intentions. The consequences lasted for generations. That was over 80 years ago, and the pattern continues. The Patriot Act was supposed to be temporary after 9/11. It had sunset provisions so that it would expire. It is still in effect 24 years later. Less than 1% of its secret warrants were used for terrorism. Now it's used for things like seizing journalists' phone records, cataloging protesters, and investigating political opponents. Last month, in November 2025, U.S. immigration officers were approaching teenagers on bicycles near an Illinois high school. They pointed phones at the teenagers' faces for facial recognition scanning. The technology was built for border enforcement. Now, it's scanning American kids on the street without warrants and without probable cause. The photos are stored for 15 years, even without a match. You cannot decline. Immigration powers are being used to justify mass surveillance of everybody. You cannot build surveillance that only targets bad actors. The technology doesn't know the difference between a terrorist and a journalist, between an illegal immigrant and a young citizen on a bicycle. Once the infrastructure exists, it gets used on whoever those in power decide to use it on. The infrastructure serves whoever controls it, and that control changes hands every 4 to 8 years. But with age verification, there's an even more fundamental problem. It will not work. If the problem is addictive algorithms, the endless scrolling in social media apps that we're all familiar with, age verification doesn't fix that. Age verification addresses access, not design. A 15-year-old in Australia is now blocked from accessing social media, but a 16-year-old is allowed access to the harmful system. The algorithm didn't change. The business model did not change. The risk of harm did not change. Just the age of the person being harmed. Age verification lets platforms keep their harmful business models while pretending to protect children. The government gets surveillance infrastructure. Platforms keep engagement maximizing algorithms. Everyone declares victory, and the actual problem remains untouched. If you believe that algorithms are the problem, like I do, age verification does not address that. And even if the government did regulate algorithms, the premise itself is flawed. Government regulation is a game of whack-a-mole. Technology evolves faster than legislation. These problems are not going away. They are getting worse. The real solutions are behavior modeling, education, and community. These build skills, not rules. A rule says you cannot use this app until you're 16, while a skill says I recognize when something is designed to manipulate me, and I choose to disengage. Rules only work when someone is enforcing them. The moment the enforcer is gone, the behavior returns. Skills persist because the person owns them. A child who understands why something is harmful will make better choices than a child who was simply told no. Government regulation imposes rules. Parents develop skills. That is the difference. Meanwhile, this infrastructure creates new harms that we are not even considering. Imagine your child's future when they're 25. Now imagine a system that's been watching them since they were 16. Every search, every post, every friend, every interest linked to their government ID, stored permanently and searchable by anyone with access. At 25, they apply for a job. Their profile is reviewed. They try to start a business. Their history is checked. They speak up about something controversial and someone pulls their file. That is not safety. That is a system that decides who they are before they have figured out who they want to be. This is already happening in fragments. In the UK, 33 people are arrested every day for things they posted online. The US now checks visa applicants' social media history going back 5 years. Employers regularly discipline workers for posts. Banks close accounts for reputational risk. Age verification connects these fragments. It creates a unified identity layer, linking your government ID to your activity across platforms. It is the infrastructure that turns isolated incidents into a system. And once that infrastructure exists, it will never shrink. It will only expand. It will find new purposes. The original justifications become irrelevant. When the system fails, and it will fail, you are still the one dealing with the consequences. The government does not fix the problems that it causes. The platform does not unleak your data. That responsibility never left you, even when it felt like you were handing it to someone who knew what they were doing. All this being said, the harm to children online is real, and it is probably worse than you think. Suicide rates among 10 to 14-year-olds tripled between 2007 and 2019. It is now the second leading cause of death for young people, with nearly 20% of deaths from ages 10 to 24 being self-inflicted. Sextortion reports jumped from 187,000 in 2023 to 546,000 in 2024. 2025 is on track to approach 1 million. And those numbers are from just one reporting source in the US. Global numbers are not known, but are likely orders of magnitude larger. The scale of the problems is accelerating with each day that passes. This is a genuine crisis that requires deep consideration and urgent action. But freedom is expensive. Free speech means that some speech will be offensive. Free press means that some reporting will be wrong. Free parenting means that some families will make choices that you disagree with. The question is not whether freedom has costs. It always does. The question is whether we trade our freedom and the freedom of our children for the promise of eliminating those costs. Every time we have made that trade, the freedom was permanently lost and the costs were not actually reduced. We just added new costs: surveillance, control, and dependency on systems that we cannot hold accountable. So, what should we actually do? Here's something worth considering. These laws regulate what companies have to do. They do not regulate what happens in your home. They do not make your family's decisions for you. What makes this even more difficult is how overwhelming it can feel. These platforms are designed by the world's best addiction experts alongside the world's best software engineers. Their job is to capture everybody's attention and hold it as long as possible. Your child's friends are all online. Schools use apps for coordination. Sports teams communicate through social media group chats. It feels like there is no real choice. Another thing that's worth considering is that social media usage is consensual. No one is forcing your family to use it. You do not need a law to protect your children from something that you can simply choose not to use. You can opt out today without waiting for any regulation. Think of it this way. The internet is a buffet with all kinds of content for you to choose from. You do not control what is offered at the buffet. What you do control is what you put onto your plate. The law does not decide if your child has a smartphone. You do. The law does not decide what apps are installed on that phone. You do. The law does not decide whether you hand over your family's data. You do. Before any platform asks for an ID, ask yourself, is this platform worth the risk? If it feels wrong, the answer can simply be, then we are not using this platform. Monitoring systems like Bark, parental control like Apple Screen Time and Google Family Link, you must configure these yourself. And your children's physical boundaries with technology, like keeping devices out of bedrooms and using tech only in common areas of the home, those are decisions you make, not the government. And you do not have to do this alone. Programs like Wait Until 8th show that when families in a community coordinate, the peer pressure alleviates. When your child is not the only one without a smartphone, the peer pressure drops. No government surveillance required. Just parents deciding together what is right for their children. And remember, children have a right to privacy just as much as adults, perhaps more, since they cannot yet protect it themselves. As parents, we are stewards of that privacy. Our job is to protect it until they're old enough to make their own decisions about what to share and with whom. Handing their data to a surveillance system before they understand what was taken is not protection. It is abdication. And it is a choice we are making for them that they will live with forever. The question is not whether you trust the people running the government. It is whether you trust everyone who will ever be in charge with data that will exist forever, used in ways that you cannot predict. I do not, and I don't think you should either. Your family's safety is your responsibility, not the government's, not a tech company's. That responsibility is the price of freedom. Don't let anyone convince you that giving up your freedom or the freedom of your children is the cost of keeping your children safe. It is not. It never has been, and it never will be.